to this episode of Chakmah Choter. We're back in our library studio. We have Leo with us, and of course, Wookie is is going to make his contribution as well. Where we were in Chakmah Choter is a real interesting passage. It's the whole scenario of what's transpiring here is so interesting because this is the great divide between Yahweh's perception of his relationship with Israel and Israel's perception of their relationship with Hashem G-D.
There's a word for that. I think it's called delusional.
Cognitive dissonance, so it might be true as well. Since this is important, I want to sort of establish, if I may, some framework for this. From Yahweh's perspective, as it is presented in the Torah, Numbers 11 is horrendous. We have gone through it in these programs. Yahweh opens the chapter by explaining that his anger is burning against Israel, that he is exceedingly displeased and he resents Jews. And there's no compromise here. He is angry. And the reason he's so angry is that the people are obnoxious. They're malcreants. They are embittered. They're contentious. They are completely disconnected from their reality. They have imagined that they were better off as slaves enduring genocide and apartheid in Egypt than they were in the company of God, who is feeding them, nurturing them, protecting them, and leading them to the promised land while educating them. And so God is exceedingly disappointed in Israel.
I'll go even further. If Israel were standing on her head, spitting out nickels, God wouldn't look at her.
That's correct. So it gets worse because the person that Yahweh had engaged to work through to save his people from annihilation in Egypt was annoyed with the Israelites to the point that he said, I don't understand them. I don't like them. I can't endure them. It's impossible to lead them. I do not want to be anywhere around them. I'm giving up. And it's so bad that God, if you have any respect for me, I want you to just kill me.
Kill me now.
So now you're 0 for 2. You lost Yahweh. You lost Moshe. It was not Yahweh's fault. It was not Moshe's fault. It was your fault, Israel. And you haven't changed. You're every bit as antagonistic and belligerent towards God as you were then. And this is right after your senseless meltdown. When you told God, when he came down and met with you in your presence beside Moshe, and you told him to go away, that you never wanted to hear from him again, you never wanted to see him again, and you just as soon die as to have to hear from God again. You can't be worse than that. I understand that in the Jewish culture that is created by the rabbis, they don't want to talk about this and they don't share this with you. But why don't you open your Torah? You've got one, to Numbers 11 and read what it says. Yahweh did not disagree at all with Moshe when Moshe said they're impossible. No one can lead them. No one can guide them. No one can protect them. No one can teach them. No one can endure them. I'm out of here. And all he did is said, I'll take 70 men of your choosing and I'll share my spirit that I've offered to you with them. And they will help to relieve some of the burden of these people. But still, not a one of them will speak for me. And then Yahweh helped to relieve some of Moshe's angst by introducing him to Eldad and Medad, which I don't think you have ever heard previously stated prior to my announcing it to you, that Eldad is Yahweh's beloved, David, his chosen one and son, and that Medad is Dod's right hand, the man who would work hand in hand with Dod to restore his reputation with Israel. Well, this meltdown in Numbers 11, and the meltdown was really induced by Israel. Yes, Moshe collapsed, but he didn't collapse because there was something wrong with Moshe. It's all to blame was Israel. We move into the 12th chapter of Numbers, and there's no page breaks, of course, or chapter breaks in the original text. So we just move from one discussion to the next, and we have Moshe's sister, Miriam, and his brother, Aaron, who both approach him and confront him on their disregard for his wife, as if it was the brother and sister's decision as to who Moshe would marry and have a child through. And then they use that as their way of snipping at him and said, you know, she's not as good as the rest of us because she's not a Jew. And
they still do that today.
They should. They do it both ways today. The Goyim do it to the Jews. You're not as good as us because you're a slimy Jew. You killed Jesus. And the Jews do it, and they look down their noses at Goyim. And so it goes both ways today. And they followed that up by Aaron and Miriam by saying, we also speak for God. To which God says, hell no, you don't. I choose who speaks for me. And you were not my choice. And he was so disgusted. He said, even if your father spit in your face, because he didn't want to admit that he was her father, but if you had a father and he spit in your face, I wouldn't relent on you. You're estranged from this community and you're stricken with leprosy. And then in Devarim, when we have our final mention of Miriam, we're told that she is the exemplar of divorce, eternal separation from Yahweh.
And yet the rabbis defend her.
So her only, yes, get that 1 second. So her claim to fame was that she also spoke for God. Now, actually, she never spoke for God, never said a word. She just claimed that she too would speak for God. And God snuffed it right out. Well, you have a problem here because the Jews, rabbis in particular, want to pretend like you have a special status with God. And that as God's representatives, they have a special status over the people and over everybody else. But they don't ever want to talk about the fact that Moshe, the very person who provided the Torah from Yahweh, said, you're obnoxious, I'm giving up on you. They don't want to speak of the fact that God thought they were obnoxious and gave up on them too. But that's the reality. And then when they were being rejected by Yahweh, their answer then was as it is now, which is the point Leah just made. They claim, well, we too speak for God, which is exactly what the rabbis have done. And they have written over and spoken over the voice of Yahweh ever since. They have erased his name. They have written him out of their lives. They have written themselves in, and they have written many, 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 many times more than what Yahweh said, all in an argumentative fashion. And in this particular case, justifying the woman who Yahweh struck with leprosy. He was so disgusted by her and said, it's as if I spit in your face. They call her the great woman, the great leader of Israel. And they say that it was Moshe's crisis of leadership, that Moshe was the one who failed, not the children of Israel. and that the heroine of the story, the hero of the story, was Miriam, and that God was wrong to have reacted in the way that he did and strike her.
Wouldn't you say this is a synopsis of how Jews kind of understand the whole thing, the whole story?
The whole
They get it.
It is.
So we get it so backwards.
It is and the reason we're going through this is twofold. Well, threefold really. One is that all of the publications from Jewish organizations take this same view.
Yeah.
That Miriam is the ultimate hero, that she stands for what they stand for, which is we too speak for God. Mm-hmm. And yet somebody is wrong because God says, no, you don't. And he not only said, no, you don't, he struck her with leprosy, estranged her from his presence and from the community, and then announced that her divorce was permanent.
Did you hear that? He threw her out of the encampment.
That's right. Completely. And this was a woman who was previously covenant. She spoke for a very brief moment to lead the women's chorus of the Song of the Sea, probably just a month earlier. And so she would have been covenant. She would have been a prophetess for a brief moment. And when she became rebellious, overstepped her bounds, became contentious, God threw her out and never let her back in. Yes, she came back after a week's time to the encampment, but God was very clear in the divorce decree that was issued in Debadim.
In fact,
Miriam
she is the
example.
model for divorce.
She is the model for divorce. So that's something to keep in mind. So we tell this story because we had somebody that was previously claimed to be covenant and was in our midst with a number of people. And I think there's only about 6 of them now that are part of this group. And claiming they too spoke for God, they formed their own breakaway clique, and they were contentious and rebellious. And so God wanted us to know how to deal with them and to warn people about them so they didn't get lured in.
Before you go on, they didn't form a clique. They formed a religion.
Yeah, they did. Some other goddess religion, very common throughout time. But the second reason we do this is because this is the contentious moment that defines God's animosity towards Judaism. It is the first clean break. Well, it's not the first religious break. That would have happened when they made the golden calf. Mm-hmm. But and then the second one was when they told God to go away and shut up. We never want to see you or hear from you again, which is why the rabbis talk over him today with their Talmud. But this was this third one is essential because this is where the rabbis hang their hat. With the other two making the golden calf, they don't want to talk much about that because that was Aaron, that was their guy doing that, and God killed all of those who were involved in it. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the meltdown that led to Moshe's saying, "I can't do this job anymore," because that makes them look really bad. But what they want to talk about is how God was wrong in his judgment of Miriam, and that she should be considered the great heroine for we too speak for God.
What chutzpah.
It is.
You're going to sit there and tell God he's wrong? This is the essence of what's wrong with Judaism.
Right. So
really,
it is. That's why we're telling this story. So we're on right now, Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 12:9 is where we concluded our last program. And so with this introduction, I'd like to resume there. I do have a program note for those who are listening. I posted earlier that Wookie has a social calendar. He has an obligation that he has this evening. And the only way that Wookie can be in attendance with his social schedule is for us to start the family hour an hour earlier. And we will conclude family hour as a family hour this evening, as opposed to making it family 2 hours. So we'll see you at 5 o'clock Atlantic time, which is Eastern, 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, here's this text. And the righteous indignation and the intense animosity. It's from off. Off is anger, displeasure, burning resentment. It's from a word that speaks of the flaring of the nostrils, where you're
Yeah, think volcano.
seething mad. So the polite way to say it today is righteous indignation. Intense animosity would also be correct. Anger, displeasure, burning resentment of YAHOWAH. Of YAHOWAH. Was kindled, and it burned. It was aroused and enraged with angry consternation against them. And then he departed, walking away. So the Jews of what we call now Numbers 11 and 12, with a general rebellion where they were cantankerous towards YAHOWAH and cantankerous towards Moshe, causing Moshe to give up, causing YAHOWAH to give up, became a more focused rebellion with two individuals, Aaron and Miriam, claiming that they spoke for God. And God at that point said, I'm done with a lot of you. I'm walking away from you. That's why when Jews say today, let's pray to Hashem. Why? He's not listening.
Well,
Hashem will protect us.
But they're praying to a nameless God anyway. How can a nameless God know a nameless person in a nameless place? It's all cognitive dissonance. It's delusional.
So here, God's angry. He has a burning resentment towards the children of Israel. And his anger was kindled, which means the Jews ignited it. And it was against Israel. I don't think, last time I checked, that God could be against the name, so he is not anti-Semitic. And yet,
hardly.
He is disgusted with Jews. Something to think about, isn't it? So he departed, walking away. So he proceeded to move away. And unfortunately for all of you Jews that are listening to me, this was written in the call imperfect. The call means no nuance here. This is genuine. This is actual. This is real. Imperfect means there's no end in sight.
Take that to heart.
When people act in a manner that causes God to walk away, there are some very serious implications. But when we recognize this, there is something worse than angering God. And that's causing him to leave you, to disassociate from you. I am certain that there are things along my life's way that I have done that anger God. Even I'm sure there's things I've done that he was frustrated in the last 24 years. But nothing to the point that he's going to walk away. And that is, of course, inferring that his purpose, his chosen implements, Moshe, for example, were also disassociating. That means they could be there on occasion when required and go through the motions and do their part. The heart was no longer in it. They had checked out. Even the thought of pushing the first of the threes, Zeroah, aside and claiming to speak for God was enough to enrage the Almighty and arouse his consternation. And other than slander his wife, that is really all that Moshe's sister and brother had done to this point. Well, that's not quite true. Aaron had already been a scallywag, hadn't he?
Oh, yeah, they built a calf.
Yeah, he was.
And called
the
it
only
the God of
person-
Israel.
I think he was the only person involved in the golden calf that wasn't killed.
Yeah.
He had a role to play.
A big one.
Yeah, adversarial alternative. He is essentially, Aaron is very much as the adversary in this story. He is the alternative to Moshe.
He's the alternative to Yahweh, and he is the rabbis.
Yeah, he's Judaism. Aaron is Judaism. Moshe is relationship.
Yes. Look what you traded for.
And Miriam, she is the adulterous woman.
Yes, she is. And
So
she definitely needs a mikvah because she's been fooling around with a lot of paramours.
And if there is no resolution for the adulterous woman, she stays divorced forever, doesn't she?
Yes.
And there was no resolution for Miriam.
Nope. Not even if her father spit in her face.
Yeah. And the very fact that it walked away in the imperfect, meaning that it was forever without end, can still be true, even if there is now a means to reconcile the relationship with the few that are harvested, Bakurim, Shabua, Teruah, and even those who benefit from the sacrifice of the red heifer. And that is because he didn't say that he was walking away from every Israelite for all time.
No,
it's walking away from Israel in general for all time. So it's most, but not necessarily all at this point. We have a telephone call, as you can hear. So Miss Leah stepped out to take my phone. We have a very interesting phone etiquette among husband and wife. You might kind of pick up on our relationship as you see us interact here as part of the show. But Leah has the code to my phone. She has my phone probably as often as I have my phone. And I'm totally comfortable with the realization that she has total access to my phone. And that is something that is actually quite uncommon in today's world, even and especially actually among husbands and wives. So here we are. And unlike the rebellion perpetrated so viciously here, because this is a prophecy against me, where today's Miriam and her Aaron began by making all manner of false claims, derogatory, really trashy statements about my wife, none of which I shouldn't say none of what they said was true. The things that they said were true were just a way to besmirch her. Things like, for example, she really isn't a mother. Well, the daughter she raised was an adopted daughter that she devoted 15, 16, 17 years of her life to raise. So not her biological daughter, but indeed her daughter in terms of the only mother she ever knew. Just to show the difference between truth, which is exceedingly positive, and a lie, which is not. The fact that she isn't Leah. Well, she came into our relationship when I first met her. She had a different name. She told me that she did not like her name because of the fact that there was just her former relationship with her ex was so horrendous that she would love to have the opportunity to distance herself from that and begin anew. And so she asked me to give her a new name, and I'm the one who chose Leah. And so her name now is Leah. Something that Yahweh does, he renamed, didn't he, Abraham? He renamed Sarah. He renamed Jacob. So it is something that Yahowah does, and when we follow his example, that's certainly on solid footing. And so rather than a negative, it's actually a positive, the reasons that she wanted it and the way that we went about accomplishing it. But anyways, a whole series of things like that, and they published articles just to tear my wife down. You hear her in these shows. She's very bright, very sweet, exceedingly supportive, cares deeply about her peoples, no nonsense. But yet they were vicious. Now, the thing that is different, however, is that with Miriam and Aaron, they actually never said anything from the point that they said, we too speak for God, and then God nipped it in the bud, and they never got a word out edgewise. This rebellion against me, this mother goddess cult, started to wear me like a skin. They used my translation style, which is exceedingly unique. All my transliterations, exceedingly unique. They actually took my translations and used my name, and they created a website that mirrored our existing website, even transitioned from away from their old logo to a variation of the logo we were now using, and did everything they could to pretend that they were me and that now they speak for their mother goddess. It was repulsive. So here, it was nipped in the bud very quickly by Yahowah, and in our case, they have essentially gone dark. They still exist, but there's passwords. Not Craig is their password, and that's their username is not Craig. And they're fixated on me, as you can tell. And because I am the bull that Yahowah has deployed to fulfill this role, their password is no bull. So their sites are password protection because they don't want to have anybody that's associated with me know what they're doing, even though I routinely receive their own message exchanges between them. They're just vicious. They're conniving little psychotic bullies. But anyway, they were gone on, and they have their whole doctrine. They pretend to not only speak for Yahowah, but to misrepresent me. It's a form of counterfeiting that is identical to what we see when Paul counterfeited dough to create the myth of Jesus. And but Paul say it's the same kind of thing.
Mm.
So in this case, Miriam and Aaron had not gone that far. They had not made false claims regarding God. They had denounced Moshe's credibility only in the sense they insulted his wife, but they did not try to counterfeit him, all of which were done in the case of this rebellion that was perpetrated when we lost our very ineffective web manager, social media manager, then publicist and webmaster, all in one fell swoop. But it took all of about 15 minutes to regroup, and here we are.
However, before we go on,
Mhm.
just a personal note. Betrayal is something that I don't forgive, and I don't think Yahowah does either.
It is a bitter pill for Leah to have endured this, because she had befriended this woman who defrauded her of her reputation, and then between the two of us, she stole upwards of $20,000. And to have somebody become that vicious and conniving, she has every reason to harbor animosity and resentment. I know that Yahowah harbors resentment because this is the story that he told us to turn to address this, which is one of the reasons we do so, is we always seek Yahowah's guidance on how we should respond to every eventuality that comes our way. And this is how he told me that we should respond, and directed me to this as if it were written for us. So that's true. And in my case, Uh, um, just as Moshe was the best thing that ever happened to Miriam and Aaron, and everything that Miriam and Aaron came to know about Yahweh came through Moshe. The same thing is true between me and those that left as part of this rebellion. Everything they knew about God had come from my translations and insights and commentary, and that I had done enormous favors for all of them. And in the case of the ringleader, no one in her entire life was kinder to her than I was. No one had ever tried to protect her from herself and from all of her foes, imagined and real, than I had. And then to be openly betrayed by that kind of person, while that kind of person then pretends like they're the victim, it's repulsive. It is, you just are left with a disgusting, bitter taste in one's mouth. And, the only positive thing I can say about all of this is they had no effect on us. They only affected themselves.
Yeah.
And that there is, there's a tough job that Yahweh has asked me to do,
Yeah.
but it does come with some perks. And one of the perks is, because I am the last of the three Zeroah, I can determine who does and does not make this ride. Now, I have to use Yahweh's criterion, but based upon Numbers 11 and Numbers 12, I would be fully within my rights to make certain that none of those who are still part of that rebellious clique are part of this harvest. I can tell you that it wouldn't even be fair to my wife to have her exposed to them.
Do you hear that?
So they will not be joining us.
It is him who decides.
Now, there are individuals that were kind of on the periphery that I don't see comments in favor of this cult that may come back. And we'll see if they do. I hope for their sake they do. But the ringleaders, there's 6 of them. They know who they are, and they are persona non grata, just as Miriam became. It is interesting, though, that you'll also notice that as we go forward, that Aaron immediately said, this is really bad. And the way that he responded kept him from suffering the same penalty, which means that Yahweh realized that the instigator was Miriam, and that Miriam had the ulterior motives here that were going to be so caustic. And so he set the example with Miriam and didn't need to do anything more for Aaron at this moment, because Aaron immediately said, whoa, this was a really, really, really bad idea, which the psychotic
Which was
woman
true.
that led this rebellion against me, her Aaron became the most belligerent of all. Different story in that regard, just more extreme. Same story, just more extreme version of it. So God was so repulsed by the supposition that we too speak for God, that he intervened to denounce the would-be perpetrators and let the world know the consequence would be grievous if attempted again. And it was against me here recently, and it has been by the rabbis ever since, and it was by the most egregious of the rabbis, Paul, who authored and inspired the Christian New Testament. It is not like Moshe to be victimized here. It's inappropriate for him to be victimized here because he didn't choose this role. He didn't petition for the part. No one that is chosen by Yahweh in this regard petitions for the part. In fact, if you knew what the role is going to entail, even when you're asked, you'd say, maybe,
you might run away.
Yeah, maybe. Well, nice chat.
You might run away, yeah.
Happy to meet you, God. Hope to see you again someday. It's just like Moshe, like Dode. You're going to represent God. You're chosen to represent God. Most people are going to hate you.
Can I, before you go on, there's something that I've noticed. My instinct is, oh my God, just run away from that. I'm walk away from conflict kind of person. Both Dode and Moshe actually did the same thing. They left
They did.
the people of Israel. They both
did.
left. They went to other countries. They were like, I'm done. I can't do this.
Yep, they did.
They both did.
They both did. Yep, when there was the Absalom rebellion, his son came against Dode. Dode, rather than staying in Jerusalem and with Yahweh at his side to find the Absalom rebellious group, he left. When Moshe was attacked, he fell on his face, ran away and fell on his face. Their situation is different in that they're confronted by the actual presence of these belligerents, and in my case, they're online. You know, my exposure to the belligerents is, at least somewhat filtered. But the fact is that God picks different personalities and attitudes for different roles. That's not mine. You want to come after me, you're going to get both horns. I am not backing down.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to run from any of them.
Yeah, you talk about af and the flaring of the nostrils. You ever seen a bull? What happens with a bull when you anger him?
I've been accused.
Just saying.
I've been accused of being nuclear.
Yeah, you can go nuclear. It's true.
Yeah.
But your nuclear is still sweeter than mine. God picked people for different reasons, for different situations. And so in this situation, he needed somebody that wouldn't back down. So he didn't pick a lamb this time. He picked a damn bull.
Yep, and the barren woman who doesn't back away. Yeah. I don't.
So in this case, Yahweh intervened. He nipped this in the bud. The would-be perpetrators or put on notice, as well as the rest of the world, that you do not speak for God. And as I say, Moshe didn't choose this role. He didn't want this role. Yahweh had chosen him. And God isn't one for making adjustments midstream. God can see the future. He knew what was going to happen before it did. Now, he is sometimes, he'll tell you the truth. Sometimes he doesn't tell you the whole truth. Like he didn't tell Moshe when he was already reluctant to go back into Mitzrayim to free his people that, oh, by the way, these people, they were belligerent towards you in Mitzrayim when you tried to help them. They're going to be far worse this time. And you're going to give up and you're going to want me to kill you. He left that part out. When he chose Dode, he didn't say, oh, by the way, this is going to lead to the most gruesome form of death ever invented in human history. You're going to volunteer for this, mind you, but in your second of 3 lives, you're going to be crucified by people that don't exist right now. They're called Romans, but you're going to learn all about it. Trust me, it'll be fine. And then your soul, you're going to go to hell, and you're going to take the guilt of all humanity with you. No big deal. And by the way, prior to that, in your first life, your own son is going to rebel against you and lead a coup. Hey, but we'll have fun. No, he doesn't spill it out all at once and say, this is what's going to happen. It's like fathers don't typically tell 2-year-old children that if you drive drunk, you're going to run into brick walls and other cars and probably end up in a cemetery. Now, it's something that you will tell them, but you don't begin the process when they're 2 years old. There, you begin with don't put paper cups into the light socket, otherwise you're going to look like that lamp that's over there. So age appropriate, and we kind of grow with God, and as we grow and develop a little backbone, a little maturity, we're able to handle a little more of the story. And actually, when you find out, oh, by the way, that you're going to be killed this way, that's part of the service that you're going to be providing my people. By the time you hear it, you're not only saying, "Are you sure you want me to do that? Is that really you're saying, bring it on." Happy to do it. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the trust that you would engender in me thinking that I would fulfill this and do as you have requested. So you actually go to the point where even things that would be perceived as a sacrifice, you look at as an opportunity and as an honor. So you do grow in this relationship, and this was true with Moshe. He would recover from this terrible moment. So God can foresee the future. He knows outcomes of his decisions long before they play out in the ordinary flow of time. And he also recognized that you can't represent him effectively unless you have suffered a fractured family on multiple levels, because that's all that Yahweh has ever endured from Yisrael, is a broken family. And therefore, your heart can't be in it. Your head can't even comprehend it until you have suffered on multiple levels of fractured families. Why this departure of this group back in November of last year was important, because you had to know that even in this mission, as we're working as a covenant family to pursue God's agenda, that there would be fractures in the family. You just you have to know about it. You have to feel it. You have to be frustrated by it. You have to overcome it. If you don't, then you're a mushmelon. You're not of any value to God. Nobody ever has character without having overcome a difficult situation. And it's interesting as we survey the testimony of those who have become part of the covenant. Every single one of us has had a rough patch that rather than giving up, we overcame. And it's what gives us grit. It's what makes us interesting. It gives us resolve and character. It makes us more resilient, more dependable. And so when the going gets tough, and I want to tell you, when you're dealing with Israel, it's always tough. You've got the moxie to keep on keeping on.
And here's the truth, Israel. I have a PhD in overcoming horse pucky.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not backing down from you. I didn't back down from the psychopaths, the narcissist, or the borderlines, or the crazy people who hated me for no reason at all. I'm not going to do it now. And I don't think he will either.
Yeah, there's the normal tendency in people is to try to figure out a way to survive. So Leah was married to a psychotic man, and he had conniption fits over the smallest thing, like having the salt and pepper shaker on the wrong side of one another, turned inappropriately and not in the exact correct place on the table
forever.
And he would go through a threatening diatribe if it was altered. So rather than saying, wow, you're a real asshole, why don't you get out of here and just leave me alone, which would be the response I would have. She made certain that salt pepper was proper lined up, always in the right place, unless when she finally wore thin of it, she would screw with it just to screw with him. But
that is true.
Yeah, see.
Only when it was mean. Yeah.
So she was a little bit of a schemer in that way. I'm
Yeah,
not so much. You kind of know where you stand with me. I'm going to tell you right where you are.
Yeah, OCD can wear on anyone.
Yeah, it does. So, but we've all come out of these tough situations, and it's important to know them, admit them, and grow from them. It is what makes us who we are, makes us interesting, makes us usable. So in my case, since we're getting personal here, rather than be presumptuous, for a decade or more, I perceived myself as nothing more than an anonymous translator. I served as a commentator, sharing what others I had written. By others, I mean the prophets had written. Comfortable in my role, indeed relishing it, I stepped out of anonymity and into the spotlight only after I had encountered hundreds of prophecies which begged otherwise. It quickly and irrefutable became obvious that these harbingers of tomorrow applied to our collaboration. And I had flat out promised that I would go to where the words led, no matter where they led, no matter how many sacred cows were gored in the process. So by this time, there were many thousands of profoundly important insights derived and shared from the research and the study that Yahowah and I had conducted, and none of which were previously heralded. And there were 35 books that had been composed, all of which served as validation of this being chosen for this mission. We were indeed doing something very special together. Therefore, confronted with all of this evidence, I realized that I would be doing a disservice to Yahowah and his people if I denied that God had revealed and foretold this role that we were collaborating on in thousands of different places.
Your dotes herald his bashar. There's no possibility of hiding.
No,
The role of a herald is to give the instructions to the people under the banner of his king. That is their role.
Begins in the opening of Bereshith, and it continues all the way to the last chapter of Malachi. Every place you turn, God has interjected what we are doing together into the story. And it's not because our collaboration is the most important collaboration in God's story. The most important collaboration is actually with Dod. The second most is with Moshe. But Moshe has been misinterpreted, and Dod has been completely ignored. And so for there to be a return, for a remnant of Yisrael to recover from their obnoxious behavior toward God, there would have to be a third player in this story whose role it was to knock some sense into some hard-headed people.
Religion or relationship, we are here to show the difference between the two and to allow you to choose for yourself that which you want to apply to your life or lives.
Yep. Your choice is religion or relationship. You cannot have both.
No.
Your choice is the rabbis or Yahowah. You cannot have both.
I would go further and say your choice is Miriam or Yahowah.
Yeah. So as we pursue what occurred long ago, we discovered that the punishment for contravening Yahowah's intent and suggesting that the sister and brother's testimony were also inspired by God, especially valid with regard to his Torah, Yahowah pronounced that Miriam, the instigator, was malignant and diseased, clearly demonstrating that no one should approach her. No one should listen to her. No one should touch anything associated with her, or they would be stricken with the same disease.
So the other part of the book is don't touch her house, don't touch her clothes, don't touch her skin, don't eat from her drinking cups or eating plates or her food things. Stay away.
And that is Yahowah's testimony for today's Miriam. No reason even to mention her name. She knows exactly who she is. And today we know who the Aarons are. So while she had her Aaron, there are also the Aarons of the rabbis.
Pathetic.
Miriam's fate was not pretty. When the cloud, that's the one that Yahowah was within, not all of Yahowah, but a projection of Yahowah was in this cloud, turned away and departed from being over the tent, be the tent of the restoring witness. He's going to return to that same place, by the way, because the tent of the restoring witness is going to be brought back for the two witnesses, the two restoring witnesses, Yada and Elia, going to be the same tent. and Yahweh is going to shine above it. So when the cloud turned away and departed from over the tent, then behold, Miriam, the embittered, contentious, and rebellious. Miriam means the mentally and emotionally troublesome and despondent, as well as well-fed, fatling sister of Moshe. From Mary, a bitter, fatling, and well-fed beast, and Mara, to be contentious, insubordinate, and disruptive. Was panicked and plagued, confused, depressed, and discouraged, malignant as a leprous hornet. She was a pest in the form of an aggressively irritating wasp and a stinging, malevolent leper.
Wow.
Representing one who is icy cold and frozen without genuine emotion. And Aaron, wanting to serve as the adversarial alternative, turned to face Miriam, the embittered, contentious, and rebellious, this mentally and emotionally troublesome and despondent and well-fed, fatling sister. And behold, she was infectious and plagued. She was confused and disoriented because she was malignant and leprous, a pest in the form of an aggressive wasp and stinging hornet. Sarah. Midbar in the wilderness.
Do you know why the
12:10.
wasp?
Why the wasp? Why the wasp and the hornet?
Okay, so wasps, although they, from the outward appearance, can look like a bee,
Mhm.
they're very destructive and murderous to bees, and bees produce honey. Honey is a metaphor for the Torah.
Wasps are mean-looking. Hornets and wasps.
No,
they're really mean-looking bees.
Yes, but they come into the bee's nest
They
and
do.
they raid it.
They do, and they kill. They kill.
And they
bees.
kill the bees.
And the bees are associated with two things in Hebrew: honey, which is has an enormous longevity, so it's symbolic of eternal life, and it is something that is sweet on the palate, like the Word of God. And the word for honey and honeybee and the word for word in Hebrew are the same word.
All the same.
They're all derived from dabar.
Yeah.
So the bee is the Word of God. It is sweet on our tongues, and it causes long life. I'm sure that I always like to say Yahweh cheats when he created Hebrew, so that his metaphors actually walk on all fours, or all sixes in the case of all sixes in the case of a bee. And so this angry version of the good thing, the bee, which pollinates and therefore makes plants productive and fruitful. So the bee is also the insect that pollinates plants and makes them productive and fruitful, which is symbolic of his harvest, which we are now engaged in. So the bee is good for that, and the hornet is the destructive
is
insect.
The absolute enemy of the bee.
So it serves perfectly to describe this moment we're in now. Thank you, Leah. That's a profound insight. Even this word for all of this panic, plague, confused, depressed, discouraged, and malignant, leprous hornet, acting as a pest in the case of a stinging hornet, it is from Sarah. Ever heard of the Eth Jacob's Sar?
Yes.
And Sarah?
It's nearly upon us, yeah.
It's the time of Jacob's troubles. The TSAR, either A or AH, is synonymous with the trouble. It means to be confined, to be reduced in size, to be constrained, to be attacked by an adversary, to be harassed, subjugated,
debased,
persecuted. The time of Jacob's trouble is a tribulation. It is a horrid, terrorizing, embittering experience for Israel. It is going to start here in 11 months, and of course, we're in the birth pangs of it now. So what Miriam was now enduring was symbolic of what Israel is about to endure. And so Israel being viewed by God as still diseased, Israel, by claiming we too speak for God, which is the Talmud and the whole role of the rabbis and Judaism,
Rabbi Paul, Rabbi Akiva.
is viewed similarly to the time of Jacob's troubles. And this was something that beginning more and more to dawn on me as I look at the counterproductive attitude and approach of Netanyahu, where I had come to realize that America was going to be the culprit that would ultimately betray Israel, because I had studied Yeshaya, the prophet. And I knew about the time of Jacob's troubles because I had studied also Yoel. And it's common thread throughout the prophets. And I knew the time that this was going to start. And so I've always known that Israel would be victimized this way. And then, I think I can be emphatically stated that I understand the curse of Christianity and its New Testament, and Islam and its Quran better than not only anyone alive today, maybe anyone ever. And as such, I knew the forces that would come to bear against Israel to cause this terrible calamity where so many Jews were going to die. But what I had not foreseen is how complicit Israel would be in her own demise. And the great culprit right now is Netanyahu. But you can't just blame him because he's the most popular political leader in Israel over the last 40 years. So it's the people who continue to vote him into power that are really to blame. And he is more popular now than he has ever been after getting Israel to the point of almost utter destruction in this war with Iran that accomplished nothing other than to assure that Iran would be a nuclear nation in the short term and galvanize Russia and China against Israel. And had war goals in Gaza that turned a very bad situation in Gaza that led to the horrendous affair of Alaska flood October 7th, and made a bad situation much worse because the war goals were unobtainable, and then doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down until there's nothing left of Gaza, and the whole world is turned against Israel, which is going to lead to an Islamic State carved out of the heart of Israel, making Israel indefensible. Israel has become its own worst enemy. Israel, 2/3 of Israelis want to end the war and get their hostages back. And while Israel has fought the war in a manner that was suicidal, when you are willing to trade 20 lives for what will be well over 2 million lives, you're not playing with the right implement. You're not thinking your way through. You're feeling your way through, and that's foolish because of the consequence and the number of people who will suffer because of that foolish decision. And 60% or more of Israelis want to have relationships normalized with Saudi Arabia, even though MBS is a more ruthless psychopath than is Donald Trump. And they don't realize that either one of those two psychopaths are playing Israel to make Israel more vulnerable.
Big mistake.
Oh, big mistake. So in this statement here, by having Miriam afflicted in such a way that the word is somewhat synonymous with the root of the time of Jacob's troubles. And it's not just the root of the time of Jacob's troubles, but there is another word that should be emblazoned in every Jewish mind that also incorporates Sarah. It begins with my, which means to ponder the implications of, and then it has Sarah in the plural, which means would have a ym ending. Have I given you enough clues, Leah, to know what word should have been very clearly etched in the minds of the Israelites at this very moment that incorporates Sar? Begins with
Mitzrayim.
there it is, Mitzrayim. To ponder the implications of being plagued, discouraged, malignant, constrained, abused, subjugated, and persecuted. Which is just to say that Miriam represented the fact that mentally she was still in Mitzrayim. She was still in the realm of religious and political oppression. She hadn't left. And it's true of most Israelites today.
Absolutely.
So what using this word implies is that God took the Israelites out of Mitzrayim, but he was unable to take the Mitzrayim out of the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so going over this sentence again. When the cloud turned away and departed, that means the presence of God left them. And he hadn't returned. Yeah, they'd see that the cloud would lead them during the day and the fire would lead them at night, but it was always distant and never personal again.
Yeah, it was going ahead of them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So when the cloud turned away, then departed, sure, took off, rejected, forsaking, abolishing, cutting off. From over the tent of the restoring witness. He's going to return to the tent of the restoring witness. It's just going to take a really long time. Not too long from now, about 4.5 years, but a long time from then. Behold, Miriam, the embittered, the contentious, rebellious. Miriam is the adulterous woman. Israel now is the adulterous woman. Miriam is Israel.
They are a stand-in for each other.
Mentally and emotionally troublesome and despondent. She was panicked. She was Sarah. Panic, plagued, confused, depressed, discouraged, malignant as a leprous hornet, an irritating wasp, a malevolent leper, representing one who is icy cold and thus has fabricated emotions. You know why you have to have fabricated emotions? You've done some study in this area. What would be your diagnosis of someone who has to fabricate their emotions, who has no real empathy?
No, psychopath, sociopath, somewhere in there.
It's a cluster B
Cluster
disorder,
B.
isn't it?
It's a cluster B phenomenon, yes.
You were married to one, as was I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Know all about this. Projections are weapons. They're vampires in that they feed off of them,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to conjure up their own to throw them as weapons at someone else. So to say she was icy cold is to say that she had no empathy. Donald Trump is an example today of a person without empathy.
Absolutely. So is Netanyahu.
Yeah, I think Netanyahu is another person without empathy. When you meet somebody without empathy, they are exceedingly dangerous in positions of power. That's a person they could look at, for example, a dog suffering and chained up and tied and crying and walk right over it, or a baby that was bleeding and bludgeoned and step right over the baby and not even care. And if you're not that kind of person, then you actually have empathy. But if you are the kind that can walk right past that, you don't. A person without empathy does not care about the ramifications of them fulfilling their ambitions. It is Machiavellian. The ends justify the means. And Aaron, wanting to serve as the adversarial alternative, Aaron, alas, one alarmingly choosing to offer a troubling option, from aha, not so, an emphatic adversarial situation with an alarming cry. I guess it has made its way right into English, hasn't it? It's like, oi, whoa, and aha. It's made its way right into to English. It's from R to be otherwise and own things pertaining to this. Turned to face Panael Miriam, the embittered, contentious, and rebellious. And behold, she was infectious and she was plagued. She was confused. She was disoriented because she was malignant and leprous, a pest in the form of an aggressive wasp and stinging hornet, Sarah. Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 12:10. So the contentious and embittered insubordinate, who was disruptive and troublesome, was equated to leprosy, which is a contagious, unattractive, and debilitating, even deadly plague. She was irritating God because she was malignant, a confused and malevolent pest to be avoided. She was without empathy, icy cold, because she was unconcerned about the harm she was doing to people who would be misled by her rebellion. We find in the rebellion against my role as Yahowah's Choter and Nakar that the very people that she lured around her were the people that she besmirched to me and to Leah prior to luring them into her group. Horribly. She demeaned them. She denounced them. She even admitted to playing with them and to using them and to controlling them. And then she lured them in, making them feel like, well, they were part of a superior team when she had no empathy for them, no respect for them, didn't care what she was doing to damn their souls. It's an
vile
disorder.
Creature.
It's what happens when you're a psychopath. And as bad as it looks, it would be far worse than it appears, because even though Miriam was she was the only documented case of leprosy in the Torah, there are copious instructions from God on how to deal with those afflicted by it. And so Leah was one of those who said, don't touch it, don't go near it, don't go near their clothes, don't go near their vessels, stay away from them, isolate them, all of that sort of thing. All of that is because she did a search in the Torah for what things God provides as instructions for leprosy. And what she found is that, well, Miriam is the only case of leprosy in the Torah. There are copious instructions on how to avoid them.
Yeah. And the one I didn't mention, I think, is the most important. Yahweh says to tear their house down, brick by brick. Tear it down.
Yes, and her Aaron built her a house.
Mm-hmm.
In every case of leprosy in the Torah, it is goodbye and good riddance.
Yeah.
And not a case of other people with leprosy. She's the only one with it. It's just that the depiction of somebody having leprosy, which is in the Miriam example, let me point this out to you. In the Miriam example, burn their house down, don't have anything to do with them, don't touch them, don't have any contact with them, avoid them at all costs. This is contagious, it is deadly, it is stigmatizing. Don't do this. In other words, leprosy is being associated with religion.
Yep.
Equally
don't touch
contagious.
Their clothing, don't touch their plates, don't touch where they walk, where they sit, where they reside. And
it's a stand-in for religion.
Mm-hmm.
Leprosy is the stand-in for religion.
Yes.
Miriam is the stand-in for the adulterous woman that became Israel. Aaron is the stand-in for the rabbis and Judaism, and leprosy is the stand-in for religion. That is what this story is all about.
Mm.
That's why
And
we learn so
religion
much
puts
about-
you where? Back in Mitzrayim.
Oh, that's where they never left.
No.
That's why in Numbers 11, the children of Israel are heard saying, we were better off in Mitzrayim. We like the food better there.
Hmm.
We liked it better in Mitzrayim. We want to go back. First thing they did when they were being pursued by the Egyptian army is they said, you just brought us out here to kill us. We'd have been better off if we stayed. And we made that statement on and on. The fact is that Israel had not, and Israel has not walked away from Mitzrayim. They're still there.
Give me that good time religion.
So it is interesting that Aaron was not similarly stricken. And the reason is that he wasn't the instigator. He was the lapdog. And he immediately recanted his ill-advised plan of his sister, and he admitted that he was wrong. Yeah,
Not just
the
wrong,
current
that he was
psychopaths, Aaron,
stupid. He was like, oh, what I did was just dumb.
But the Aaron in the story of our conflict, he became the most belligerent and obnoxious of all.
Oh, yes.
So he is not going to get the same reprieve.
Nope.
Not based upon Yahweh's example. Then Aaron, wanting to serve as an alternative example, begged, pleaded with Moshe. Notice he's going back to Moshe. He knows he's got no chance with God. So the best he can do is to go to the man that God obviously chose.
Of course.
Pleading with Moshe, please, I beg you, my Lord. He's telling his brother, calling his brother my Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how screwed up this man's mind was. Please, I beg you, my Lord, I'm praying that you accept my excuse, my master. By Adoni, Ani. Excuse me, sir. And you choose not to place upon us an enduring punishment for leading astray and missing the way, because we lack understanding.
Oh, that's just...
And we have become unthinking and foolish, content with pleasing ourselves, and willfully resolved and determined to pursue that which we knew to be unsupported and wrong. And because we were wrong, we missed the way, we led others astray, and we bear the blame and the resulting guilt. Bamidbar's in the wilderness, Numbers 12:11. As confessions go, that's a confession.
Bravo.
That's a confession, baby.
You were honest and forthright, and it is the state of Israel today.
Well, no, unfortunately, Israel is not making this confession. Israel thinks that they're in the catbird seat, and their Hashem is going to protect them, and that they're praying to their G-D when they bang their heads against the stone wall. They are not making this confession. They will.
I disagree.
Well, a remnant will.
This Israelite
is
making that confession.
But you actually didn't have to make God.
I was wrong.
God is not looking for a confession from any of us. Okay.
No.
I was once religious. I led Bible studies. I led evangelical outreaches. I was a trained evangelist. I was the youngest ruling elder in the history of the Presbyterian Church. I was super political and patriotic.
Oh, yes.
And so when Yahweh asked me to do these things, I had already walked away from all those things. Just like Moshe, I realized, no, there's no way to support any of those things. They're all wrong. They're all completely fraudulent. And so I had walked away from them. And when Yahweh said, I want you to do this, there was never a time where I felt the need to tell Yahweh, I'm really sorry I led those Bible studies. I'm really sorry I was an evangelist. I'm really, really, really sorry I was political. No, never once. Never even crossed my mind to say it. because just like Moshe, the reason I was chosen, well, two reasons. One is by default, there was no one else to choose.
Yeah,
But like Moshe, which was also the case with Moshe, there was no one else to choose.
I'm pretty sure.
I had exposure and had rejected politics and religion. And having been exposed to it and having chosen to reject it means that I was in a position to be used and to be effective in that role. So I realized that the fact I had been these things and was no longer these things, rather than a liability, was now an asset. So I never did this.
I had a different reason to apologize.
Okay.
Yeah,
But I didn't apologize.
I told God at the age of like 7 or 8 that he could go, go away, because if this was the chosen people, I do not want it.
Mm-hmm.
I had that to apologize for. So
yeah,
it was rather personal.
Yeah, I think most Jews at one time or not have had that. If this is the fate of the chosen people, could you choose somebody else?
Yeah, and the reality is that we're the problem.
No, of course.
Him.
Well, it's the exact same thing as the whole meltdown in Numbers 11. The problem wasn't Moshe. The problem was Israel. And the problem in Numbers 12, again, is not Moshe. And in fact, Moshe, up to this point, you know how much Moshe has said in this whole narrative?
Nothing.
Zero.
No.
Problem's not Moshe. Problem is the children of Israel. So I understand that, and why somebody could feel guilt. And I recognize that when this final remnant witnesses Dod return with Yahowah, they're going to cry for him as they would cry for a firstborn son.
Oh, buckets.
Buckets.
They're going to cry
because
buckets.
of the collective guilt of having done this for so long.
Yeah.
There's a sizable difference. In my case, I did not apologize. I don't see any reason to apologize because while I recognize that what I did was wrong and I'm no longer doing those things and had already disassociated from them, it was by having been exposed to those things that I was prepared for the things that Yahowah wanted me to accomplish. I could write
more effectively.
Twistianity because I understood Christianity. And I was in a position then to...
And that's something that Jews don't. We don't speak Christianese. We run away from it.
Yeah, you don't understand it.
No.
And I do understand it, which means that I was able to refute it.
Right.
So a different situation. But then again, I'm not Aaron. You're not Aaron either. Aaron was still wallowing in religion.
Yeah.
So he was voicing all of this stuff, but he wasn't sincere.
My grandmother always told me, don't watch what the lips are saying, but what the hand is doing.
Yeah. Well, that's the case of Aaron would be bad. So anyway, so Aaron, wanting to serve as the adversarial alternative, begged, pleading with, and it's really Amar El, so begged and pleading with. That's my rendering based upon what follows. But you could just say Amar means he said to, but certainly he was begging and pleading. Moshe, the one who draws out. Now this is by Adonai Ani. You just hear the pleading here through these words. And the moment somebody uses Adonai, and there are times where those who are in subordinate roles to the king will refer to the king as Adonai. It's today you would say, sir. But it means my Lord, my master, my Lord, the one in a superior position. And so he is essentially saying, sir. But that's not the way it reads to me. So I'm reflecting how I'm perceive this going on. Please, I beg you, my Lord, I'm praying that you accept my excuse, my master. And it's by Adonai Ani. It's not ba. So you have this sense of pleading that is conveyed here. And you choose not to place upon us an enduring punishment. Now you can just see here where he is misguided. because Moshe hasn't said a thing, hasn't done anything, has he?
He's
So
threatened no one.
So who put on the enduring punishment?
He did.
Yahweh did.
Ah,
Yahweh was responsible for the punishment that
that's true.
right, that Miriam was facing. And in this case, what Aaron was asking for, he didn't say, could you remove the punishment that Miriam was enduring? It's not what he was doing. He was saying, don't place upon us this enduring punishment. So what he was saying is, holy crap, she's done for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to save my sorry ass.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pleading with you, don't do this to us, which is he's saying he's too much of a weasel to say, don't do the same thing to me.
Yeah, weasel.
And Yahweh's already gone, so he can't talk to Yahweh.
No.
And Yahweh's going to have nothing to do with him.
No.
So now he's pretending that it's Moshe's call. It's not Moshe's call.
No. It's Yahweh's.
Now, it is true that under these circumstances, had Moshe wanted to do so, had this occurred and Moshe handled his business the way that I think a bull would handle his business, particularly an empowered bull, as you come back with spiritual superpowers, if you will, I would have done the same thing. I would have done what Yahweh did. And when Aaron came and started pleading for himself, you get the same treatment, pal.
Mm-hmm.
You're not pleading here for her. You're pleading for yourself.
Yep. I think that by being around extremely toxic people, you get to learn their ways, their thinking, their irrationalities and projections and object identifications, and you learn how they move. And
now, the reason that Yahweh didn't plague Aaron at the same time, first of all, he did immediately
realize his mistake.
Cop a guilt. Second of all, he went from bad to not as bad. He started off horrible with the golden calf, and in this episode, but he became much more muted after this point. Third, Yahweh was already in a position where Moshe wanted him to kill him. He couldn't deal with this. He didn't need more responsibility. And early here, he had encouraged Moshe to go along because Aaron was a blabbermouth.
True.
And now to take Aaron out, in addition to his sister, would have made Moshe perhaps feel even more vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And so these are all reasons it didn't happen. But it's also because of the personality of Moshe. You have to put yourself, and you should, in every scenario.
Absolutely.
I read every one of these scenarios as it applies to me, because God is the same. And if we're engaged doing God's work, we should apply all these stories. So in my case, I wasn't promised another mouth. And in my case, I was not going to back down.
Hardly.
So in my case, I would have just taken care of business. I would have smacked the both of them. And it's not to be mean. It's just that's what they deserved. We have a mission to do, and obstacles have to be cleared from the path. That is what Yashaya in the textbook on how to be a Choter says. Your job is to clear obstacles from the path, to speak for God, clear obstacles from the path, so people know where the path is and they can avail themselves of it before it's too late. That is your job, and you damn well better do it. So I just brush them aside and say, not only are you out of here, I want to make an example of you so that others don't follow in your
And that's exactly what we do today.
footsteps. That's why when we had the rabbi that was talking about a rabbi who was rabbi and Lord, that wrote this little ditty about how it was Moshe had the failure of leadership, not the children of Israel being obnoxious, and that how Miriam was the great patron, the great example, and that they only missed her when she was gone, and how God had treated her improperly. Rather than brushing it aside, I took exactly that quote and I posted it and I reposted it and reposted it and explained it and explained it and explained it straight on. the bull's nostrils flare and he charges ahead. The difference in personality, but it's a difference in time.
Absolutely.
Uh,
It's what
yeah.
it's the right approach needed at this moment.
He needed to lead these people into to the promised land. I need to get their attention. So please, I beg you, I'm praying that you excuse my master and choose not to place upon us an enduring punishment for leading astray and missing the way, because we lack understanding and have become unthinking and foolish, content with pleasing ourselves and willfully resolved and determined to pursue that which we knew to be unsupported and wrong. My experience when I was leaving Christianity and having confronted so many religious leaders, including the number 2 most famous religious leader of the day back in the time of the good old time gospel hour and the first television evangelist, the leader of the moral majority, Jerry Falwell was a good friend of mine, and spent a lot of time with Jerry. And when I confronted him as I was beginning to work with Yahweh and learn these things, and say, every aspect of Christianity is fraudulent, he said, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but it won't fill his money coffers
But
now, will it?
The people that come in and sit in the pews of my church wouldn't be here, and those letters that come in filled with money for my university wouldn't arrive if I said the things that you're saying.
Nope.
And if you say them, they're going to label you a kook. So, just don't do it. He would even talk about all the other television evangelists, all the Jimmy Swaggarts, the Pat Robinsons, and the Jimmy Henn, or no,
they all know they're dishonest.
Whatever his name was, that had the dinner in a show where he, touched people's heads and they fell on their back.
Benny Hinn.
Benny Hinn. That's it. Benny Hinn. And he would
I
talk
always
about
thought
all
those. I used to watch those as a teenager just to laugh at them.
Yeah,
Like,
and
they were
what he said
hilarious.
about Benny Hinn is he told me, he said he went up to Benny Hinn one day and said, "Hey Benny, I know you got lots of money here. You're flying around in a G2 and you're putting on the dinner and the show. I'd just like to ask you, has anybody that you have actually touched in this way been healed?" And
Nope.
he said, "Nope." Nope.
There you go, kids.
Not one. So they know the point is they know they're wrong.
They know they're full of
They
it.
know they're wrong. I can tell you absolutely for certain, every pope knows that they are wrong, that they do not speak for God. When Paul wrote the Christian New Testament, the first 14 letters, he absolutely knew he was wrong.
What isn't it Pope Pius who said this myth we have in Jesus has been very profitable?
Yes, he did. It was a pope. Yep. Because we are wrong, we have missed the way, we've led others astray, and we bear the blame and resulting guilt. It is all true. So wrongly claiming to speak for God, especially when in addition to his chosen implement at a critical time, is a punishable offense because it leads others astray. Any variation from God's message, even if perceived as augmentative by the perpetrator, and even if the offending individual has previously made notable contributions, is considered unacceptable, as is the person making the claim.
Leprous.
It isn't just wrong. It must be denounced while the offensive individual is held to account.
Unclean, unclean.
Unclean, unclean. Well, thank you for listening. This is a challenging material to go through, but I think as a team here, we've made it as pleasant as it can be. We've helped to expand our working knowledge of what God's view is when people claim to speak for him that he has not authorized, and we actually then have a better appreciation as to why God goes way out of his way to announce prophetically those who do speak for him.
Absolutely.
So that you might know. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the YAHOWAH blog. I am Craig Winn. This is Leah Winn, and Wookie has already retired for the afternoon.
He's at my feet.
Good day.